楽しい。
What's up guys, welcome to part 2 of my character analysis of Misaka Mikoto. If you missed part 1, the link will be in the description down below. In that video I focused on Misaka's character exclusively in Index, which is the main story of the Toaru franchise, something Railgun onlys won't want to admit. But if you are a Railgun only fan, or you just love the franchise as a whole like myself, you can rejoice as I'll be covering what makes Misaka such a well-written and likeable lead protagonist in Railgun. Don't forget, at 5k subscribers, I'll be doing another character analysis of the main antagonist of the entire franchise, Aleister Crowley himself, so be sure to subscribe to not miss out. Also, like I did with part 1, I'll be talking about Misaka's character in the Railgun arcs chronologically. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to talk about every single moment in the series that involves Misaka, or I'll be here all day, so I'll only be talking about stuff that I personally find noteworthy. And I'll exclusively be talking about the arcs from the manga, so I won't be including the anime only Big Spider, Poltergeist and Silent Party arcs. My sincere apologies to the greatest filler character of all time who has a strange milk addiction. Now let's begin. Misaka is presented as the main protagonist in Railgun, as opposed to her introduction in Index, where she first appears as the representative of the science side. In Railgun, Misaka is introduced as someone who acts on her own intuition when faced with a problem, irrespective of what her friends think, or even if it isn't exactly legal. She even pretends to be a member of Judgment when she is confused by someone else to be a member, and she goes along with it simply because she thinks she can solve some terrorist incident involving bombs, so she decides that it will give her the platform and opportunity to help solve the case. In this first arc of Railgun, I feel like it explores the perception of Misaka, how she wants to be seen by others, in contrast to how others perceive her. As the third ranked level 5 in Academy City, those who recognise her treat her with a lot of respect because of the status she has in the city. But most of these people who treat her so respectfully don't really know her as a person, and I think this also causes some kind of stereotype as well to do with Misaka, but I'll come back to this point later. So while she appears dignified and brilliant on the outside, inside she can be quite childish with her stubborn nature, the way she can get angry quite quickly, and of course her love for Gekota. So Misaka can actually defy expectations of what people perceive her to be, as not many people would expect the third ranked level 5 to be like this. And it's interesting to see how people treat her when they have no idea who they are, like the skill-out delinquents who harass her, the kids at the playground who make fun of her for wearing shorts, and of course Kamijo Toma, who at first has no idea who she is, and yet goes over to the delinquents to try and help her out. Toma then knows who she is after this, of course, but I believe Toma doesn't really put Misaka on any kind of pedestal. He pretty much treats her how he would treat anyone else, and I think that's what Misaka kind of takes to with Toma. As at first, she pretty much views him as a complete idiot, as he's pretty much getting himself into danger needlessly, and has no actual ability to help him in that situation. But at the same time, I think Misaka actually likes that he wasn't willing to be a bystander in the situation like everyone else. He was willing to get involved, even if it meant him getting hurt as a result. Also, I find it funny how Toma pretends that he knows Misaka to try and get her out of the situation, which is kind of a throwback to what Misaka does in Old Testament 5, where she pretends that Toma is her boyfriend to escape a situation with Unabara Mitsuki, aka Etzali. But the main difference is that Toma was doing this to save Misaka in this situation, while Misaka was just doing it to save herself. I think most importantly, Toma exposes Misaka's pride as a level 5 Esper, in comparison to him being a level 0. As Misaka is infuriated at Toma calling her a kid, and also at the fact that Toma can negate her attacks and won't even get a scratch on him despite Misaka's efforts, despite him being a level 0. But while she is prideful, Misaka is also depicted to be humble as a level 5, as she started as a level 1 Esper and worked her way up to become a level 5. And from her other scenes, like when she meets Saten, she doesn't want to be treated differently because of her rank. But at the same time, I feel like she is also very confident in her abilities. I guess it is because she worked really hard for a number of years to gain the level 5 ranking that she doesn't want a level 0 being the one to undo her or being the one that she can't beat, as that must be a stab in the gut for her. So it makes sense that she can be humble yet also prideful depending on the situation, but it does add depth to her character and shows that she does have multiple layers to her. And I think Misaka is somewhat envious of Toma, since Toma is basically treated as a normal person, as he looks completely normal and he's just a level 0. He's not respected like she is as a level 5, even if she feels like she wants to be treated as just a regular person and friend you can get along with without that being attached to her as a person. But Toma certainly doesn't do that. He doesn't respect her in the same way a normal character would when meeting a level 5. He just treats her like any other girl, and I think that's what Misaka appreciates more than anything. During the Graviton bomb incident, Toma saves the day, but he doesn't care about being recognised as a hero, and I think Misaka is kinda jealous or wants to be like that, as she is credited for solving the terrorist incident and not Toma, because she is basically seen as the highest in the society of Academy City as a level 5. A level 0 like Toma is less likely to receive the recognition he is deserved. And when Misaka confronts the terrorist states his stereotype of Misaka as someone who has never struggled in life and will never understand him as a result. And yet again, this is without even knowing her personally. He had no idea that she had to work all the way from the bottom to get to where she is now. So I think this pretty much summarizes the perception of Misaka, how she wants to be seen, and how she actually is. While some people will be like Saten, who are completely in awe of her as a level 5, there will always be people on the opposite side of the spectrum, like the terrorist, who hate her just for being a level 5 and no other reason at all. So I think you have like the two extremes of like envy towards level 5s, and you also have the great admiration that some people have towards them. And then you have pretty much Toma in the middle, who doesn't belong to either category and just views everyone as an individual. At least that's the idea I think this arc is going for as I'm rereading it again. Also, I have to mention the main villain of the arc, which is Kiyama Harumi, how she basically exposes Misaka, saying that she's basically naive about Academy City, that Misaka only started caring about the dark side experimentation of pupils in Academy City once it was a relevant threat to her personally with her friends. And I think this does shed light on a character flaw of Misaka, as she can be quite naive, especially when it comes to what happens behind the scenes in Academy City, which I believe is foreshadowing to the Sisters arc. But yeah, it does show that Misaka does have flaws to her character, which I think makes her feel more human and realistic as a result. Now, I've already talked about Misaka in the index version of the Sisters arc in part 1, and most of what I said in that video applies here, especially the bridge scene with Toma and Misaka, but in Railgun we get to see what Misaka endured on her own in this arc, as opposed to Index, where her struggles were only really evident from being alluded to with her talks with Toma. This arc truly challenges Misaka about dealing with her mistake in the past of trusting the scientists with her DNA map, which causes her to blame herself for the Sisters arc, and thus attempts to solve the situation on her own. The trauma she faces watches the clones being killed, and her feeling of helplessness when she fights Accelerator, and feels the only way to save the sisters is to sacrifice herself. Her confidence in her own power is shattered, not just against Accelerator, but also pushing herself under fatigue, forcing her to retreat against Mugano and Item, and when Toma stands in her way to stop her from making a hasty decision. We truly get to appreciate Misaka's character development in Railgun more than we did in Index due to this additional context and emphasis, as we get to experience Misaka's developments during this arc with her, as opposed to merely being foreshadowed and then eventually revealed in Index. And her relationship with the sisters is also given more time, and they have great chemistry while together, which makes us feel more sympathy for both parties as a result. Also, while the things I have mentioned are certain improvements from the Index version of the arc, I do feel in the Index light novel there are some things that it does do better than Railgun, so both versions have qualities worth reading for, but now's not the video to talk about that. Also, I didn't go into too much detail as normal about this arc since I already articulated most of what I wanted to say about it in part 1. Now let's talk about Misaka in the Daihasesai Arc. Misaka's best character moments come from her reactions when finding out her friends are being attacked, or when she discovers that Shokuho has wiped her from the memories of Kuroko, Ubiharu and Saten. Misaka has previously always strived to keep her close friends away from her own personal battles, so seeing her furious reaction to Shokuho's meddling gave us an insight to how much Misaka values her relationships with those close to her. During Misaka's confrontation with Shokuho, we also get development between Misaka's relationship with the Queen of Tokiwadai. Shokuho was clearly established as Misaka's rival, and was written in a way to make us, the audience, dislike her in her debut scene, just like Misaka does. Shokuho being arrogant, manipulative, and willing to control others with her power, just to simply taunt Misaka. But later we learn that Shokuho isn't necessarily as bad as we would have thought, as Shokuho herself tried to prevent others from getting involved in Gensei's plan in order to keep them safe, and viewed Misaka's involvement as something she couldn't control, hence her efforts to keep Misaka away. Therefore, from a certain point of view, Shokuho is kinda acting like Misaka herself did in the Sisters arc by trying to burden herself with solving the problem at hand. I think it is because Misaka can emphasize with Shokuho's reasoning for her actions that Misaka calms down herself and decides to come to a compromise with Shokuho where they should work together to stop Gensei. I think it shows maturity from Misaka that she is willing to put aside her differences with Shokuho in a situation and realise there are larger problems at hand despite the things that Shokuho has just done to her and her friends. Now, we all know from watching the anime or reading the manga that Misaka loses control of herself as Gensei starts the level 6 shift, slowly turning Misaka into a level 6 Esper. In this form, Misaka's personality or psyche is depicted to be trapped in a void and has little control over her actions or body, which worsens over time. Furthermore, her psyche is manipulated by Kozaku Mitori, who has a means to communicate with Misaka to a certain extent. This situation does, however, reveal something interesting about her character. While being influenced by Mitori, this form exposes the dark side of Misaka's conscience by Mitori directing Misaka's hatred towards the windowless building where Alistair Crowley resides. Alistair is not just responsible for creating Academy City, but also the Sisters Project, and for facilitating an environment where the experimentation and crimes of the city can thrive. All of Misaka's hatred and anger towards the dark side of the city from the previous arcs can now be unleashed in the form of getting revenge on the figurehead of Academy City, by giving her an insane amount of power and by manipulating her mind. Of course, Misaka is unable to control her new power, and increasingly starts to lose control of herself, where she begins to start destroying parts of the city and putting innocent lives at risk, while also severely hurting Sugita Gunher and Toma, who are trying to stop her. In my personal view, I think the level 6 shift is meant to symbolise that if Misaka becomes consumed with revenge and power because of what happened in the Sisters arc, it will just cause destruction to those around her, and will also destroy herself in the end, as it is even stated that Misaka would explode into a supernova if the level 6 shift was completed. Therefore, I consider Misaka's character during this arc as a natural progression from the Sisters arc by posing interesting questions about what could happen if she made different decisions in her life. So I really like this symbolism behind the level 6 shift. I'm not sure if it is what the writers intended, but that's my interpretation at least. Not much happens character-wise during the Dreamranker arc for Misaka, as it's mainly comedic moments and it's a pretty short arc, so we'll skip over that and talk about the Doppelganger arc. The Doppelganger of Kuriba Ryuko is the main antagonist of this arc, trying to kill the original Kuriba and anything related to recreate herself, and ultimately try to commit suicide. This is because Doppelganger thought that she was the real Kuriba and had a soul, before learning that she was merely an artificial being with no purpose. The interesting part is that Misaka obviously opposes Doppelganger in order to protect the original Kuriba and any bystanders to Doppelganger's actions, and that Misaka values the life of Doppelganger even if Doppelganger does not and only wishes for death. This is perhaps because of Misaka's relationship with the sisters that she sympathises with Doppelganger, as the sisters were artificially created and once believed their purpose was to die and that their lives were meaningless. That is why Misaka does not wish to kill Doppelganger and feels regret for destroying most of Doppelganger's body after their final battle. But like the sisters, Doppelganger's life is given a purpose as she decides to use her part to help save the original Kuriba's life, much like how the sisters were prepared to help the original Misaka in the final fight against Accelerator. Now this is the part where I'll be talking about the arc that happens straight after where the Railgun anime left off, so this will be covering content that is only in the manga, so if you don't want to be spoiled then click off this video now. Or you can skip to this timestamp where you can hear my conclusion / summary about Misaka's character, entirely up to you. During the Jailbreaker arc, there isn't much character development for Misaka, as Saten and Ueharu get the most development instead. But there is an interesting contrast between Shudan Kimi, the main antagonist of the arc, and Misaka. Kimi hates people who protect others due to the tragedy of her childhood friend Honoka sacrificing herself to allow Kimi and the others to escape the facility where their powers were being developed. Kimi despises the powerless and wishes to spread Esper development throughout the world to create an environment where the weak no longer have to sacrifice themselves and have a means to become strong, as Kimi once knew what it was like to be weak and helpless by being unable to save her friend. Misaka can somewhat relate to this during the Sisters arc, as she knew what it was like to be powerless against Accelerator, unable to save her sisters, and in the Daihasesai arc where she had no control over herself. So these characters are quite similar, but have different viewpoints and perspectives of the world. Perhaps it is possible that Misaka may have turned into something like Kimi if Toma died trying to save her. It presents a similar situation to Aureolus Izzard, representing what Toma would have become if he failed to save Index. Unlike Kimi, Misaka values the weak and those with a lower level than her, as Misaka has seen from Toma, the sisters, and even Ueharu and Saten during this arc, that true strength is what is inside, and not what kind of power one possesses. I feel like it was a good writing decision to write an antagonist in Railgun that Misaka could relate to, as I feel that was kinda missing from the previous antagonists so far in Railgun. While I don't think Kimi is the most unique antagonist in the franchise as a whole, I do certainly value the contrast between her and Misaka. Now let's summarise. Pretty much each arc of Railgun so far has explored an aspect of Misaka's character that further fleshes her out as a multi-layered character. The Level Upper arc did a great job at introducing her character, while also presenting the different perceptions of Misaka, while also exploring how she wants to be seen by others. She wants to be treated as a normal person, values having friends regardless of their level or ability, but at the same time, she is quite prideful in her abilities as exposed by Kamijo Toma. So even if Misaka is humble in some areas, she does have a side of her that is childish and gets irritated at any challenges she cannot overcome. I guess it is because she did rise to level 5 from just being a level 1 Esper that she can relate to the struggles of being a low rank Esper. But at the same time, since she is the only level 5 Esper to have climbed the ranks all the way to level 5, she sets high expectations of herself as a result, and believes she can overcome challenges and problems on her own. This all changes with the Sisters arc as she realises she cannot control everything by herself, and relies on the powers of others to overcome an impossible situation. The subsequent arcs explore different aspects of Misaka during the Sisters arc. The Daihasesai Arc exposes Misaka's anger and inner psyche. The Doppelganger Arc explores Misaka's empathy for artificial life, and the Jailbreaker Arc explores Misaka's appreciation for those who protect others, even if they are not strong in comparison to her. While I would think it would be cool to expand on characterization that does not stem from the Sisters arc by exploring newer elements to Misaka's character, I still think this way of characterizing Misaka is quite unique, so I highly appreciate this approach. And it just further emphasizes how impactful the Sisters arc is to Misaka as a human being, how traumatic and truly life-changing it was for her, as she learnt so much during that arc, and we get to see the consequences of that in the following arcs. I also definitely find the perception of Misaka as a level 5, and the contrast with how she feels about herself is definitely one of the more fascinating elements of her character. So that's all I have to say about Misaka in Railgun, and as I said in part 1, I prefer her character in her own spin-off as opposed to Index, and I hope I made that abundantly clear here. In the future, I would like to make a video about her abilities, as there are so many applications of it, and we get to see that truly flourish in the Railgun manga, so stay tuned for that. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video, and please be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks a lot for the support, guys, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.